In the patient care setting, we have standards that we have to uphold. We want to make sure that our nursing care is meeting those standards and those benchmarks, and that patients have the very best outcomes possible. In education, it's no different. We want to outline exactly what our curriculum should entail, what those programs are going to be, how we're going to align our actual teaching strategies and the experiences that students are having in the clinical setting in meeting those learning objectives and outcomes. We're going to be talking about in this snapshot CBE specifically and why it's so important that we move forward with this type of framework to support the delivery of quality nursing education and ultimately to make sure our patients receive the very best outcomes. But then there's also CNE. Many of you are on that journey to either achieve CNE or you may be going through the renewal process. And then there's accrediting bodies such as CCNE. Now, the exciting news is that is not a focus for this video content, but we did want to mention that it's important to look at your accreditation standards as well. All of these are guidelines that really map out our journey as we move forward in meeting those specific deliverables. Welcome back, everybody, to Dr. Sellers Educate, where our mission is simple. It is to support all nurse educators that are on the journey to achieve CNE or to master the nurse educator competencies to achieve nurse educator excellence. So, what you're going to see happen is we're actually using Prezi again in this snapshot. And here's the question: what is it that you need to know? Now, we've been on this journey for several weeks and looking at what content do you want to study and what content do you not need to study when you're looking at moving forward on your journey. You always want to use the blueprint, right? We talk about as an evidence based practice what our strategy should be when we are developing valid and reliable exams. Well, step one is developing that blueprint, right? We want to map those questions based on guidelines that are listed in Billings and Halstead to ensure that we are leveling our questions, to make sure that we're looking at the specific teaching strategies that we are using and how we're aligning that question with the content in our classroom and ultimately the learning objective as well. So, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us, we're delighted that you're here. We're going to start by talking about what is CBE. Okay, so first of all, let's go back. I want to share a resource, an excellent resource. If you all don't have it, it's definitely one that you want to purchase. These are the essentials that have been published by AACN. Specifically, what I want to point out is on page 4. This is where you're going to see a really good overview of competency based education. I also want to encourage colleagues, if you're on the journey to move to the CBE curriculum, I want you to go to the AACN website. Now, we know not all colleagues are AACN schools. However, there's still a plethora of resources, might I add, free resources that are available. Their goal at AACN really is to help all of us be more competent in the area of competency based education as an educator and to provide consistent evidence based support as we move forward on our journey to a curriculum or a competency based curriculum. All right, so I just wanted to share that before we dug into our content. So, Introduction to CBE, that's exactly what this is that we're talking about today. It does transform nursing education as we talk more about the importance of engaging in a framework in our education programs that is going to allow students to master the competencies and ultimately bridge that theory practice gap. It's important for us to understand what is the definition of CBE and what is it not. Well, first, it is an outcome oriented educational model. Our learners are able to advance their knowledge and their skills over experiences rather than time that they spend in the classroom. Now, I know this is a hot button topic, so I want to come back on camera. There has been many discussions that I've been a part of as we were going on the journey to move to CBE in a previous institution that I was at. There was a lot of conversation about how can we allow students to pace at their own time based on when they have completed a competency. Well, on the clinical side, we know that that is standard, right? Even though we outline a 6 to 12 week orientation plan for critical care setting as an example, some students may progress in a way that allows them to achieve competency, get checked off on that skill within that first 6 weeks. Other nurses may take 10 weeks. Okay, so it's no different than that type of model. But I do know for many colleagues that can kind of get you ruffled underneath the surface because it's a different model, one that we've never seen before in nursing education. Okay, so I just want to point that out, that that can be a little bit of a rub and a bridge that we kind of have to cross together. And then the next point I want to make is this alignment. So you see that last bullet point, aligning with educational outcomes with the demands of healthcare practice. Now, we know that our nurses at the bedside are facing a lot of challenges. I just want to share this one challenge that is published here in the HRSA. Now, this is from March 2024, but let's take a look at what it says. This is based on nursing workforce projections from 2021 to 2036. Take a look at this number. It says, at the national level, there are shortages projected until 2036. Specifically, there's a projected 10% shortage. And by 2036, the shortage is expected to be 337,970 full time equivalent RNs. That's a lot of nurses. Okay. And so this is what we can do to ensure that we're engaging in this reimagining nursing education framework that we're talking about. Let's take a look at those skills. Let's take a look at the knowledge that we are expecting our students to be able to complete at each level and at the end of each course. Our program outcomes, we want to make sure there's alignment with the courses that we have outlined for our students semester to semester and even the sequence of those courses, right? So we want to take a step back and look at the entire picture as we work towards reimagining nursing education that is going to help us not only help improve the quality of nursing education, but ultimately it's going to provide a more practice ready nurse. All right, and what is it else is it that you want to focus on when we think about competency based education? Well, next we're going to take a look at what are some of these strategies that other colleagues are using to help them bridge the gap. Well, first and foremost, we want to think about what are going to be the tools that we use with our nursing students. We want to have formative and summative assessment tools. Okay, so speaking of formative assessment, we have a thought provoking question. Right, so you are part of a curriculum development committee at a nursing school. The committee is tasked with updating the curriculum to better prepare students for modern healthcare challenges. The question is, what is the primary goal of curriculum development in nursing education? So we have A, aligning the curriculum with institutional values to ensure seamless integration and secure ongoing support from stakeholders. B, meeting accreditation standards to maintain the program's legitimacy and uphold the institution's reputation in the academic community. Or C, enhancing student learning outcomes by integrating evidence based practices, promoting critical thinking, and preparing students to meet the evolving demands of healthcare. All right, so I'll give you all a second to think about what is this question asking me? And what is it that I know for sure? So, every question on the CNE exam, that's what I want you to think about. There are going to be questions that you get to and you think, oh, two of these answers are really good, and I'm not sure which is the best one. This is what we want you to pull from. Number one is going to be the content that you have used to review. We encourage you to only use Billings and Halstead Teaching and Nursing and Dr. Caputi's book as a supplemental resource. Now, this is based on recommendations from NLN. The exam writers have shared that those are the two primary resources that they use. So, therefore, we encourage you all to do the same, to only use these resources. And we know there's a plethora of other resources that are available, but these should be the two that you use primarily to help you close your knowledge gaps. And then the other resource we want you to pull out in case you haven't is that study worksheet. That's right here in the description. Every single time you show it for a snapshot, we want you to print out a study worksheet, write the date and the objective. What is it that you want to accomplish as a result of us spending time together today? All right, so now I'm going to take you back to the thought provoking question. If you haven't had a chance to write it down, now's a chance to do that. The other resource, specifically in Billings and Halstead, I want you to focus on is going to be on page 117. Okay, so this is going to be a really good introduction of competency based education, just in case you don't have access to the essentials resource that I mentioned. Like I said, it's definitely worth purchasing or downloading. I think there's a PDF available as well. And then while we're talking about the essentials, I do want to point out the definition of not only competency based education, but there's a whole glossary of definitions as well as reference lists, which is always great when you are trying to gather evidence to support any changes that you're making. It's just such a great resource that AACN has provided for us, and I encourage you all to have your own copy. So this is going to start the glossary that includes definitions of many of the terms that are included, starts on page 55. But for competency based education and competency framework, I want you to take a look on page 56. This is going to, again, equip you with consistent language that you'll want to use as faculty to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we are aligned with our goals. All right, so think about that thought provoking question, and we will wrap up in looking at what the best option is based on the three that we're given. The importance, well, I think we've kind of covered that. Competency based education is vital. We want to validate that students actually have the skills and the knowledge and the attitude to make safe patient care decisions when they are in the clinical space. This is changing how we train nurses. There's no question about it. It focuses on these real skills, the practical experiences that we need our students to have when they graduate, and not just when we graduate. I would even say that it is skills that we need them to have in the nursing program. When we think about scaffolding of learning, we want to make sure that we are personalizing the learning strategies and catering to those diverse learner needs. And we need students to take accountability for their learning. Well, how do we do that? Well, first, we want to set clear expectations. Let's go ahead and outline the mastery of competencies that we are expecting of our students. That means that we want to give them the skills checklist. We want them to know exactly what those steps are that we're looking for to validate competency when it comes to insertion of a Foley catheterization, as an example. We want our approach to be learner centered. That means that we are prioritizing and thinking about what content our students should be learning during that specific class or even that week. We want to align these learning experiences that we are creating in the skills lab, in the sim lab, with the actual learning objective in the course, with the actual clinical learning experiences that our students are having in the clinical setting as well. This mastery level or this term, I know can sometimes be a bit of a difficulty when we talk to our colleagues about it. But when we check students off on a skills checklist, that's what we're expecting. It doesn't mean that they are going to not necessarily have questions when they are actually in the clinical setting performing the skill. However, we know and we have enough confidence that we have checked them off on that skill because they have demonstrated the knowledge and the skills that they need to be able to provide this safe, effective patient care. Competencies in nursing education, they focus on exactly that, the essential skills that are required for effective nursing practice. We as educators, we want to start thinking about what are these core competencies? How are we going to assess and validate that learning has happened? We want to engage in formative and summative. And how do we really coach students and foster this development of competency that we want them to achieve? We talk a lot about facilitation of learning. Well, the literature talks about us really taking on the role of a coach. And we have seen sports, every season we have sports, whether it's football, even with the Olympics. So we know what coaching looks like. That requires us to have a different skill set in the clinical setting, as well as in that classroom and skills lab setting. We want to assess. Assess starts with, first of all, students being aware of the specific skills that we are looking for them to demonstrate. We also want to engage in formative assessments where we're giving real-time feedback, coaching students. Hopefully, they are making corrections to the decisions that they are making, And then when they get to that summative assessment, they're going to perform well because they've made those corrections based on the feedback we've given them during the formative assessment phase. Simulation, it plays a pivotal role when we talk about students having that safe environment where they can practice, we can give them feedback. So, what are these skills that we need to be able to engage students in the learning process, whether it's a competency-based model or it's our traditional model? That is our goal. We want to nail down what are those skills. Well, first and foremost, you want to make sure that you are collaborative, right? We want to be collaborative as we move forward with these changes. It requires us to have effective communication. We want to be able to facilitate engagement with our colleagues, even with our students and healthcare partners, our key stakeholders, to move changes forward. What is a core competency? Well, you want to take a look at the specific skills that you've outlined in your nursing program, and specifically in each course that students are expected to demonstrate. And then you want to consider which ones are crucial for that delivery of safe patient care. So as we wrap up, we're answering the question, what are these essential skills that we must have? One point that I want to add is, as you look at the AACN website, I want you to do a self-assessment, a self-study, our credentialing bodies call them, of where you are today, because this is going to help you align with what your next steps are going to be in a very strategic and less overwhelming way. Now, we know it's a lot of work when you transition to any changes related to the curriculum, and it starts with having the right resources. So going to the AACN website, I know I've said that several times now, because there's no need to start from scratch. And then second of all, you want to make sure that you have the right colleagues around the table as you're moving forward with making these changes. All right, so as we wrap up, what skills do you need to have? Curriculum development skills, effective assessment techniques. So looking at how are we validating that learning has happened? Strong mentorship abilities. When we have curricular changes moving forward, often that comes from our curriculum committee. We want to look at the mentoring that's needed and available to help faculty move forward with these changes. Collaboration is key, as well as listening, listening, and listening. This is going to be a key step as we move forward with such a huge change as competency-based education is. All right, so here was our thought-provoking question. If you chose C, you are correct. So give yourself a round of applause. Now, you do see that I've bolded a key question, which is, what is the primary goal of curricular development? Enhancing student learning outcomes by integrating evidence-based practices which promote critical thinking and prepare students to meet the evolving demands of healthcare. All right, so it's a combination of both. And what you want to do is, with this question, you could see that A was a really good answer, right? Aligning the curriculum. We've talked a lot about that. B is a good answer, meeting accreditation standards. However, the best choice is going to be C, because we're talking about the primary goal. All right, and what I would say is, if that was a muddy point for you, or you're still not clear as to how C was the best answer, I encourage you to take a look in Billings and Halstead. Specifically, Chapter 6 is going to be a great resource to help you close your knowledge gaps. We hope that this snapshot has been helpful. We look forward to seeing you in our next one. Email us if you have any questions, info@drsellerseducate.com. Have a great one, everybody.